Welcome back to Tug of Heart. Got a got a good topic today. I mean, I think they're all good topics, but this happens to be a topic I know a little something about. So I
Ooh.
am in familiar territory. Today we're going to talk about self pity, and to start with, I have to say I know a little bit about this because when I was growing up, I felt unique and I pitied my circumstances and my reality. And as I got older, what was once self pity became self gratitude because with a front end loaded and challenged youth, the rest of my life is kind of unfolded um, quite nicely. Now, keep in mind that the benchmark was a place of self pity. So I know a little bit about this. Lori, welcome.
I think I know a little bit about it too. As a matter of fact, I had thought of self pity. This comes from our talk when you had spoke about taking stock, and I said that sounds like kind of an asshole thing because I never thought. But then, since then, I was convinced it is not, and it's a good thing to do. And in examining myself, that's one of the things that kind of seem to rise. That occasionally I'll dwell on me, and my troubles, and I think that's there's nothing wrong with that. It's when we get stuck in that spot. Just so can we dive right in?
Do it.
Get right into this. So sometimes when I say me, and I feel bad for me, it's because I have a certain need. No shame in that whatsoever. Now I can do something about it, or I can just kind of make sure everybody around me is aware that I have this need not being met, and I can repeat it. I can exhaust people. One of the things that came to mind is when you had said people get, what kind of fatigue was it when you get tired of kind of concern or whatever for other people? What did you call it?
War fatigue.
War fatigue. I can give people like a Lori's existence fatigue. Okay. And so it seems all right to want to take care of ourselves, but we also kind of have a responsibility to take care of one another. And that includes when I'm in a rough spot in life. It doesn't mean my responsibility to be available for you. There's times I've fallen short because I was in self-pity, or to care for other people, to still be kind, act right. It doesn't dissolve because of my situation. So to start it right off, Leroy, how do we have like a reasonable amount of care for ourselves and at the same time others? How do we stop from getting so self-absorbed that we rob others? Oh, and if you believe it does that we rob others of their due care.
So here's the deal. Self pity is the way that I look at self pity and being familiar with self pity, embarrassingly so, is in a vacuum.
Okay.
Self pity isn't about anybody else. It's not about expressing self pity. It's not about sharing self pity. It is exactly what we're saying it is. It is self pity. So you're asking, like, how do we kind of exercise compassion and kind of park the sorrow within ourselves without depriving another individual? The other individual, forget it. Like, let's just figure out how we do that. So we say solving, sifting, sorting, soothing. Remember that in self-pity is a high degree of compassion. And so
Ooh.
when we have self-pity, when I had self-pity, I was the soothing agent for myself in because I was in a situation where I was my own, you know, compassion. There was an absence of compassion for me, or at least I felt so. And so I was that component. So forget everybody else. It was me taking care of me in my self pity.
Okay. That's brilliant because you've taught, now you're bringing up this aspect that um, if you're in self-pity, be in self-pity. But a lot of times what we call self-pity, people are trying to involve a whole lot of people around them, aren't they?
Yeah, but we're not talking about we're not talking about pitiful. We're talking about self-pity.
So what if somebody doesn't seek a resolution to whatever their circumstances are that make them,
Impossible. It's impossible. Even suicide is a resolution.
right? But what about
Not a viable one.
right? No, no, but it is. Well, and there, and some think that that is a form of almost selfish likeness also, because it is about the self, you know. Um, you're going to come to my level one way or another, brother. I'm going to tell you this. So when there, what about, it seems to me like there is this very popular idea that it's almost like a, a cool factor or something about being a victim, about announcing that you are in self-pity for yourself.
It's not self-pity. Self-pity is what you feel when you pull the covers up around your neck at night and you're all by yourself
I
and the
agree.
lights go out. In those moments before you go to bed and you're trying to understand why things are the way that they are for you. And you feel sorry for yourself. You're not thinking about anybody else. You're thinking about yourself. And to be honest, Lori, you're right to do that. There's a certain amount of, now, can we get stuck there?
Mm-hmm.
For most people, self-pity is it's a catalyst. It's a fulcrum by which we raise, the reality of our life. We have this self-pity and we push on the self-pity, and at the other end of the lever, we are elevating the situation. So it's kind of, if you can picture a seesaw, at least that's how it goes in my head. So you look at it, and self-pity isn't just pity, but it's compassion and sorrow for the reality. And most of us do that, and we collectively take inventory. What brought me to here? And this is what we would hope for anybody who is got a dependency on substance. We would hope that there is a certain amount of reflection on a certain amount of compassion. And then there are some that just didn't get the memo. I shouldn't say that, because everything is respectively important and overwhelming. But there are some people that take it, and instead of using that to elevate the circumstances or the situation, that is the crux of why they do what they do. And it's a hopeless, I am where I am, and I'm so far gone that I'm just going to keep doing this because it is a temporary anesthetic, whether that be alcohol or drugs or relationships, or, fill in the blank. It can be eating, but, that's a tough one. Am I making any sense at all? I don't even know that I am.
You're making so much sense that I'm actually doing a bit of self-correcting here as you're talking, because one of the things I'm realizing by what you're saying is true, authentic self-pity leads to true self-care, or potentially at least. And
at least it starts with compassion
for self, and that's
yourself.
So, but when people go beyond that and they just stay in the repetitive cycle of there's no hope, that's a different thing. That's despair. And so that's kind of
good, very clear.
Well, this is what I'm hearing you say. Now, so then what do you call when somebody is like feeling very sorry for themselves? So I have the self-pity versus despair, where they don't think they can mend it themselves. in a
Correct.
true way. So something has lost there. Now, what would you call it when somebody, I feel so bad for myself because X, because Y, but I'm attributing whatever situation is going on, everything that I'm attributing to as a cause is external. What is that? That's just blame and not self-pity? Or is it self-pity in the face of blame?
Well, I mean, we all want to apply a salve, we want to kind of,
You people, you don't think, honestly?
yeah, absolutely. You're asking, I think people want to give themselves an excuse for why they did what they did. Listen, who pities themselves more than somebody who goes to a casino and spends their mortgage money or their children's tuition, and then they're sitting there and they're looking for an answer, and they pity themselves, and so they invite all the things that would be potential alibis for reckless behavior.
Aside from that, there are people.
I did this because this. I did this because this. I did this because.
So it's not taking. So you don't want a self-pity that leads to not taking responsibility for your autonomy.
Wow. Okay. Slow that down and say it again.
We're coming off of autonomy. So I'm saying, in other words, self-pity is healthy unless it extends into an excuse to neglect your autonomy and your power to change situations in your life, that you are the primary driving force there. And so the next thing is when you see people that are like forever resentful in a relationship, say, but we have all seen or known somebody who, it's not just a spouse, it's not just, but maybe with children, at work, whatever, they have this type of like a self-sacrificing personality. They also have a deep resentment in it. And they say words that sound an awful like what you would say alone if in self-pity, but they're saying it to people.
Yes.
And that's their MO. And a lot of times they're just way off. They think they do a lot for everybody, but maybe, and so if it was, let's say, heartfelt self-pity, your suggestion would be cut back and take care of yourself, right?
So I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to everything you're saying, which makes such wonderful sense. I'm also, in the back of my head, I'm listening to my wife.
Yes, she's very strong. Yeah.
She's so smart.
She has zero self-pity.
She's so smart that I can't even be with her any longer because I'm wondering why she's with me. And I can't respect her. You're making a bad choice.
I don't respect her.
So Joanne tells me, early on, she said, listen, there's a few things there's like a couple of non-negotiables that we exchanged early on. One of hers was, we can't have bad days on the same day. Flip a coin, do whatever you want, but only one person can have a bad day on one day and the other person needs to be support staff. I'm like, that's brilliant. Does it always happen? Of course not. We're people. But the other thing that she tells me is you cannot live with a tally board. You cannot keep score. However, initially, the keeping score is what we learned from what was the self-pity from the previous relationship.
Right.
So you get out of a relationship and you move on to the next relationship and you're like, I saw what happened bad, so now I'm going to change the outcome by being aware of this. Whatever it is, this person puts me down. This person is not financially responsible. This person is a little overly enthusiastic with alcohol. Whatever it is, they're just not a complementary lifestyle.
Right.
So you kind of carry that. But then when you get into a new relationship, that can be your introductory, but you can't stay living that way. You can't, and then I'm guilty. I'm like, well, what about that time? Well, that time passed. If I felt that passionate about that time, I should have discussed it back at that time,
Right.
And so so self-pity is kind of, the longer we talk, I'm not sure, tug of heart, yes, but this should be balancing the heart. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to just really, really thread a needle, and the challenge is that we need a certain amount of our history, because Dad used to say, who would you be if you didn't know who you've been? So we need to know who we were in another relationship, in another job. We need to know what didn't work. We need to know when we were sitting there, despair and pity, very, very close. And we were pitying ourselves because they didn't understand us. They didn't understand. They didn't recognize our brilliance. So then when that happens,
how
like,
special I was.
That's right. This is a reality.
And so I was having a tough time doing all the special stuff I do because nobody was noticing.
Right. So then once you go through that episode like 4 times, 4 jobs, and they're still not recognizing your brilliance, maybe you're not brilliant.
Why are you saying you?
Maybe you just need to, unless they hired you to as a creative person, maybe you just need to do the job. I didn't ask you for anything else. They just asked you to do the job.
Right.
So self-pity is I think that people hang out in that phase maybe for too long.
I love this. I love everything you're saying.
Because it's there for a purpose, to recognize kind of, it's a period of data collating. It's like we're organizing everything about what put us in this situation where we're feeling sorry for ourselves, we're having compassion for ourselves, but we're also learning, because at some point we have to get out of this.
Right.
We are going to move. And that's something that, one of the best things I ever heard was, every emotion has a lifespan.
Right.
But we have to make sure that every emotion has a lifespan.
And we have to make sure, I'm actually learning, because I said this was one of the things that I fall into. So it's also, if I'm understanding you right, we have to be able to identify true self-pity and know thyself by that taking stock and enough and often taking inventory often enough to know, whoa, self-pity turned to procrastination last week.
Yeah. There's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of ugly.
It was data collection. I know what went wrong to make me feel that way. Poor me. But I've had the information for 3 extra days now, and I'm still here. So that's like, but we're doing it in the safer name of self-pity or lack of pity from other people. So it's left, this job is so important, it's left to me that I can't function and get myself out, because who else will pity me, right?
We are literally born with an aptitude for milking it. Like we are just, listen, take a little child and he falls down and he looks around to see if there's an audience. If there's an audience, because there was an audience, very hard to teach that, but they learn that, we learn at a young age. I shouldn't say we're born with it, but we discover very, very quickly that if we are injured, people help. Now, there's a big difference, because when we're young, we're born with the inability to, look after ourselves, clean ourselves, feed ourselves, wash ourselves. We can't do anything. We are completely helpless. So we start communicating. The problem is that as we progress, sometimes we fall back into this self-pity and we kind of share it. And that's the part where it becomes dangerous.
Sharing self-pity.
Because now it's no longer self-pity. Now it's a request for relief.
And you're asking other people to join you in pitying you.
Yeah, or at least be a benefactor.
Yeah.
and offer relief.
You know, what you're saying is so spot on, because I remember like just studying psychology, and generally when people feel sorry for themselves, it just came to me after you're saying this, they don't need to talk about it. It is about self. And so when it's gone beyond self, you're right, it's not self-pity. And I think I was framing it with that in mind, but it's not. So self-pity is only self. It's not about feeding on misery, or that's just a different thing happening, right? At that level.
Well, self-pity by itself,
Can it be habitual? That's the question.
mm, I mean, I'm sure anything can be, you know,
But
depending on what the results. It
what
depends on what type of results it generates. You know, I mean, that's really the big difference there.
yeah,
So
what
so as we look at this, you know, I think that self-pity all alone, yeah, I mean, listen, why do we look for shade? Because we don't like it where it's hot. Why do we carry an umbrella? We don't like it where it's raining on our head. You know, pity, we don't really like self-pity, so we change it. And sometimes we change it by sharing it. Now it's not self-pity. Now we're talking about something completely different. But self-pity, yeah, I mean, the way I see it is like, wow, you know, it's kind of like people say, oh, just go back, you know, so you lose a fight, you go back to your corner, you know, they raise the other victor's hand as they triumph. You go back, you lick your wounds, you pity yourself a little bit. And some people try harder and some people change sports.
right.
So there you have it, you know, but we're talking about self-pity. You know, I think the best way to handle it is to go back, deal with it. I mean, and it's okay to have self-pity, but then there has to be a point where we combat that feeling, because pity is an action. Having pity on yourself is an action.
Right.
So how do you combat that action? Well, you know, maybe you train a little harder. Maybe you go in a little earlier. Maybe you stay a little bit later at work. Maybe you get creative and commit to buying flowers or tools.
So what if
Joanne, if you're listening, you can always buy me tools. I love tools.
Steve, if you're listening, I like the cash, just cash. Can you don't waste money on flowers, just bring the cash home. One of the things I heard a lot is that during the pandemic and coming out of it, a lot of people have developed a kind of self-pity that's turned into depression, and they're having a hard time climbing out. Since you seem to be doing a little better with this topic than I am today, what's your advice? If they've had that much time to strengthen that action, it's got some muscle to it now.
So I'm going to say we were going down a road where we talked about mechanical
right
for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so who among us doesn't kind of self-pity at some point? I mean, I'm sure there are people, better people than me, or better at hiding it than me. But it's like you have to mechanically leave what is familiar, because I'm going to guess, you know, there, you know, being sequestered, quarantined to your home, that would be the locale of the depression, the self-pity. And it's like mechanically move yourself.
Wow. You know what? I think you have this philosophy of like, it's like a Forrest Gump kind of philosophy. I just realized that's why that guy was so successful. He mechanically shifted every shift he made.
Who?
Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah.
And it spelled great success for a very simple man.
Because he never second guessed. He just did it.
He just went, I was a running, and then he was running, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you ask, like what kind of advice, first of all, I'm not qualified to give advice, but I know that in the midst of everything that's gone on, and it's been a crazy couple of years, and I had a little bit of a scare where I had two stents placed and mechanically said, my back is bad. I've got I mean, just a beat up body. And I said, but I'm going to go and exercise. I'm going to go do what I can. And so I do, but I am mechanically moving myself. And in that, I feel a little bit better.
This is so wise.
Not always, because I mean, oftentimes I'll go exercise and it exacerbates injuries, herniated discs. I mean, it exacerbates all this stuff, but I still go.
Right.
Because it's not just about health, but it's about displacing the self-pity.
Ooh. Mechanically displacing. This is
because you can't do something and then still celebrate the self-pity. I mean, if you are doing something to combat it, that becomes the easier. Now, if you quit before you get to a place of resolve, then you might it's possible that would be a different reason for self-pity.
Excellent. Leroy, this is one of the most inspiring talks on my end. And I don't even know how far I go into self-pity, having heard a better explanation, but I know what to do. I feel you can't take a counteraction to self-pity and at the same time celebrate it, because you've moved on.
There's probably a way, but it's hard.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it.
Yeah. This has been tremendous for me. This has just been so good. But just raising the self, train harder, move, do it mechanically, just change, get it, escape the place where you're in that darkness. You have like, I'm picturing being almost like being held a hostage within your own pity. So it's like, so sneak out, get out.
Well, good.
If we have to picture it, it's like, oh my gosh, I keep feeling like this. I'm going to sneak out of the house when I'm not aware, and I will have mechanically activated something.
Lori, there was a time, and I think it was about the 1 year mark for you, and it's tragic. Every reason, understandably so, to spend a little bit of time in a place of self-pity, and nobody will deny you it, because it was tragic. Mm-hmm. But there came a point not so long ago when you just said, I'm going to go. And you left a place. But see, it's hard, because that place of self-pity, that's where the memories are. That's where there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of, you could still smell the conversation.
Right.
It's like, wow, the thing that's hard, and that I would imagine, you're my twin and I'm thinking for you, but it would be hard to walk away, to leave that spot where everything is so rich and all the memories are so rich, because you don't want the romance of those memories to fade.
Right.
And so there's
loyalty to that.
This is why I say it's like balancing the heart, because on one hand, you got to get out of this spot where it hurts, but on the other hand, you don't want to give up what that hurt. That hurt legitimizes everything you felt from inception to the passing.
You know,
it's
as
like,
a matter, it runs so deep and painful that there's times that I have uh, thought on some level like that pain is proof of life on some level. You know,
mhm.
so you don't want to, you do get attached to some kinds of pain because you're like, yeah, I'm still alive.
So, so can you tell us, is that when you say I get attached to that pain, were you attached to that self pity because that is a memorial? There's like a lot of memories in that.
Um, I don't, I don't think I thought enough about self through it. Other than experiential, I'm not. And it wasn't like in this noble, really well-adjusted place that I did it. It was almost like to be in like to be in true self pity was too much. So I think I busied myself with philosophies around it and other things. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, I was so good that I didn't dwell in self pity. I avoided it because the true self pity, now that I'm hearing what you said, is true pain. It's the pain of this is where I'm at. I got a lot of work.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, um, but having said that, and bringing it around to the pain, yes, I think you do get attached to it, and so you could get attached to self pity as well, because that to be in self pity is to say I'm in this place where I need consolation because I've lost my son, right? So there is a remnant of him in that place, so you stay there near it, just like you said about the locale. So like, yeah, you want to be around the house where he is, like it feels like you're leaving the house without your child. That feels unsafe. That feels irresponsible. In 20, almost 30 years, I hadn't left the house without a child at my side, you know, from one child to the next, like because moms don't do that. So it's not being used to it. It's hard, you know, if you got used to that.
Do you think, Lori, that there is something about self pity? Because at the heart of self pity is compassion. Whether even it's you for yourself, you are having compassion for yourself, your circumstance, your situation, your reality. You are compassionate with your reality. Is it so simple that it's easier to nurse self pity than it is to nurse rehabilitation?
Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely, 100% you're yes.
It's easier to grow, to nurture self
Self-pity.
pity.
And also there's a familiarity which makes anything easier. Repetition just makes things uh second nature. Feels natural at some point.
So, what advice would you give
You're gonna have
all of us about self pity and
when
dealing
it's
with
time to leave it, when it's time to leave self-pity, I say my advice would be prepared to fight like hell. The fight is so big that you will have to fight what feels like your biology. And that's the hardest thing in life, right? To feel like I have to not be me, to not continue being me here because I'm no longer this place that I'm staying in. Um, you know, say Seth passed a year ago and I'm still in this place of pity and not moving away because I'm not the same. To leave will mean to not be the same. So it's just like coming to terms with that feels like you're rejecting everything that you have been made to be because you've probably been made to be something new at that point. And it's having a kind of reverence for the unknown and a trust in God, the creator, that there's a reason that, you know, if this was such a wonderful part of my life, there has to be a trust that more wonderful could be made out there. I don't have to be able to imagine it to have faith in it. That's not a requirement of faith.
Wow, that's great. So I just, as you're sitting here and I'm listening to you and it's beautiful and I'm thinking about our next topic
Okay.
because we have to start putting a bow on this one.
Okay.
So our next topic should be prepping the heart.
Okay. And then from there it'll be rehab.
Sure. I'm big on prepping. I know you are too.
Oh, yeah. Well,
You,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
like
We'll
to
take it.
have you like to have staples. You like to have water. You like to have uh, food stores. You like to have um, just different things, and that everybody's at different levels. And I'm thinking about like what can we do to condition and prep our heart.
Okay.
I don't even know what this means or what it'll look like, but I thought like that's really important, isn't it?
I think we're going to be seeing a lot of metaphors in our normal day-to-day life prepping, but we'll see where it takes us. This is good. Yeah, you're right, because it's
On what menu is a metaphor?
huh?
On what menu is a metaphor?
No,
Where can I go get one of those? Sounds good. What is it exactly? Is that like stroganoff?
yeah. Ooh, I love stroganoff. Okay, when it starts to come apart, it's time to end. So, please like and share the podcast. And Leroy, wow, this is one that I'm going to revisit. You gave a so much good advice. It's more than I'm used to getting from you. I have to end with a dig because you did so well. I can't let you leave feeling that great. No, truly,
Thanks, I think.
truly, and even I don't have such a bad connotation about self-pity. I began today thinking it was a little uglier than it is and a little more harmful. I have a respect for it now. So until next time, like and share Tug of Heart. You can message us and also like and share Strong Island. Leroy, thanks again. Really
Lori,
great. A lot of
thank you
help.
for including me.
All right.
All
Until
right.
next time, farewell.
Adios.